Welcome. Regular viewers will recall that I've already had a look at this Zoids annual for you because it's a really nice one-off Zoids annual, which really sort of served as a reference point for the Zoids toys and comics at the time. Now, Zoids have actually continued long after their initial 1980s run and are, I believe, still going to this day. They are still being produced, but they're not really a mainstream toy here in the UK anymore. But we did get quite a few of them, and the ones that stick in my mind are the very earliest ones that came out when I was sort of 10 or 11. So we're talking mid-80s here in a very sort of crowded market. However, Tomy decided to go for it. And I thought it would be quite fun to have a look if I could get some reasonably priced examples of them for you to have a quick look at. And then if you're interested, I can do more detailed looks at the ones that I've picked up. But I thought it would be fun to actually find some that were in this annual. Because the interesting thing about the comics is that they use very precise renditions of what the toys actually look like. So unlike the sort of Transformers toys, where after a while the comic versions of them moved away from what the toys looked like because of their limitations, in the Zoids comic they actually stuck to the toys really, really closely. So if I start with an example here, these Zoids are called Trooper Zoids, and they are described as being sort of stormtrooper type Zoids. And in this story, a Trooper Zoid here goes kind of rogue, basically, and he gets taken out by the Great Gorgon. And the interesting thing about this Trooper Zoid is that he actually comes with sort of slightly different options for making him up. And here he is. So you can see that they're not huge, but they're quite a decent size. And you've got to remember, these are actually kits. So you actually have to construct this toy. So there he is there. And he's actually unusual because he has a backpack element here that another android could actually sit in. Now, when I ordered him, I didn't realise, but he didn't have a spare android. But as you can see, he's got a rather unique cockpit. And in fact, he actually comes with another cockpit here. So you actually get two cockpits for the price of one Zoid, which is unusual. This is more like a standard Zoid cockpit. And so the little canopy just opens up, and then you pop the android controlling the Zoid into there. And you can see it's nice detailing in it. It's not just a sort of blank a blank seat. There's actually a little bit of in detail inside what's otherwise a tiny little piece of plastic cockpit. So it's attention to detail, which I always appreciate with these toys from this era. And as you can see here, this cockpit is quite unique to the Trooper Zoid itself. Maybe some other Zoids of this particular release shared it. I'm not quite sure, but it's got a slightly sort of different flip-up configuration. And in there, you can see the slightly sort of Buck Rogers Tweaky-esque android that pilots the Zoid. And the good guy androids, well, I say good guy, the blue Zoid androids were gold, the red mutant Zoid androids were silver, and that's how you distinguish them. I sometimes find it hard to distinguish between the two. But as you can see, he pops out, but he can then sit back in this chair in the back there. Now, it's no wonder that they would have got lost almost instantly, because I don't think he's particularly held in there by anything. Although, that being said, there is actually, I wonder if that's actually the wrong way round, because, I'm just noticing that there is actually a little, he does have a hole in his bottom there, funnily enough, so there might actually be a peg that he can fit into there, but I'm not sure how he was supposed to sort of sit in that. So I do actually have the instructions for him, and this is what I actually want to show you. I'm going to keep going through the annual for now, but I'll show you him with someone else in a moment, and you can compare and contrast how the Zoid toys actually developed over time. So if I keep flicking through here, I'll find some other examples of ones that I've actually picked up here. They can be quite expensive on eBay, just the individual ones. So you do have to shop around a little bit. You see them going for sort of 40 or 50 quid, which I think is excessive. Especially as they are so breaky. I mean, even the ones that have been sent to me, I've had to reconstruct a little bit because it's inevitable. Because they do have this tendency to want to, sort of break themselves apart. Now, I almost ended up, actually, the Trooper Zoids again here. You can't see them in massive detail, but they are actually on this page as well, because they're quite standard issue Zoids. But this guy here is a slime. It's literally, that is what he's called. But I have a nice example of a slime here. He's got some damage to him. But he's, as you can see, down to the weapons on the front there, the detail is there in the comic as it is in the toy itself. So they're doing a really good job of reproducing the toy designs. But then the toy designs themselves are really, really good. He says as a weapon drops off him. But anyway. And this has got also, it's got an opening hatch to it and all sorts of bits. And so his pilot is in this flavour of cockpit, which I always really liked. I used to fly these around as little spaceships, because they have enough studs on them that you can actually put weapons on them, and then they can just sort of detach and go off and do their own thing. And it was just really good. It was just so modular, so you could do a lot with them if you wanted to. If your imagination led you down that sort of path, you had the possibility to do that sort of thing. There's nobody else in there that I've got, I don't think, so I'll just keep going. I haven't got a Spider Zoid yet, but I am thinking about getting one just to round out, because at the moment I've got 3 reds and 2 blues, which doesn't really seem fair, so I may have to do something about that. So again, Spider Zoids. Spider Zoids, I think a lot of people had Spider Zoids because they look like spiders. Why alien war machines were based off Earth creatures is open to debate, but it is what it is at the end of the day. It's clever, but they do actually look. They look really good. There's no arguing about it. Regardless of what they're based off, they look really good. And this is Zerk, and I think that's another Trooper Zoid. Actually, the Trooper Zoids get a lot of reuse because they look like Godzilla. So I think, and they look like Zoidzilla as well. Zoidzilla was the leader of the Blues, and he was a huge toy. So not many people would have had him. But the little Trooper Zoids looked very much like him, but at a small scale. So they actually played a bit of a blinder there. Now these guys, this is an interesting one. So this guy is what's called a Tyrannozoid. And he was an early precursor to the Trooper Zoids. So at one point he was a Stormtrooper Zoid himself. Then they became more like mechanics. So you can see it's referenced there as a Tyrannozoid. But I actually have him, and I'm going to show him to you alongside the Trooper Zoid, and you can see just how rapidly these toys developed. So this is the Tyrannozoid. And for me, he is, sort of the early form of Zoids, basically. This canopy, this pilot, this pod, is very reminiscent of, what I consider to be the classic Zoid line. We've got a little sticker on the side there, androids in there, so exactly the same as the later androids. But this little white pod was a very, very standard cockpit for all the early line Zoids. And he's quite basic. There's not a lot of armour on him. He's exactly what it says on the tin. They were all wind up. There were some battery-powered ones, but they tended to be the larger ones. Now, he's not quite working. His motor seems to be gone. But basically, if you can hear that, there's still a little bit give in the motor, but his feet would just move forwards and backwards, and obviously still can if you do it manually, and his arms would move at the same times by being knocked by his legs. So they're really, really clever little designs. And so this Trooper Zoid, as you can see, is basically the next iteration of the Tyrannozoid. So once upon a time they were designed to do the same sort of job, but obviously the Trooper Zoid has his own cockpit design. He's got better arms, he's got bigger guns, he's more armoured, and he just looks meaner than the Tyrannozoid does. And this is how Zoids have always gone. They've constantly developed them over time and made them look sleeker and more aggressive and all that sort of good stuff. But the core design is exactly the same because he is actually still a wind-up toy. At the end of the day, he's got a wind-up motor. Now, I'm going to have a little go at the Troopazoid and see if he will actually start up, because his motor was making more... He's got more of a click to him. And the thing is, you're always terrified with these that you're going to sort of overpressure the motor and that'll be it. But he was trying to go a little bit before. But nearly. Nearly. You see? If I lift him up, he'll probably start going in a rate of knots. It may be that he's not in quite the right position. His parts might need a little bit of tightening and so on to try and free him up. But he kind of wants to go. He just can't quite do it. It's nearly there. Very nearly there. But, that was... So, what I loved about the comics, and I am going to do a separate video on the comics. It's quite frustrating because I have ordered a few comics now and none of them have turned up yet. Because that annual is just a little tiny example of the comics that were done. There were 51 issues of comics. In fact, more than that. Because I've just found out, which I didn't know, that there was a crossover with Zoids and Secret Wars. So before Zoids got a crossover with Spider-Man and Zoids in their own comic, they also had a strip in a Secret Wars comic as well. So actually there were probably more comics than I appreciated originally. So that's the slime. I haven't actually tried winding this one up at all, so I have no idea if this one's got anything in it. It feels like it's trying to do, or it wants to do something, but I'm not quite sure what. Ooh, that's quite cool. So his head pops in and out as he goes. He definitely had a bit of oomph to him. This part definitely does not want to stay on him. But you can see how easily you would lose chunks of these. I mean, I've seen quite a few lots of loose Zoids bits. I mean, I had no idea how you'd figure out whose was whose, but... It's kind of going. He just kind of wants to go. If you give him a bit of a push, he definitely does go. There you go. So he's still up and running even now. I mean, and these are, frighteningly enough, these are 40 years old nearly, and yet they've still somehow managed to hang together. This one's a really nice one. Someone's obviously put the stickers on this one. This is a Slitherzoid. He was a slime. This one's a Slitherzoid. And his cockpit is actually hidden in here, which I always thought was a nice touch. And I think he's fairly complete. I don't know if he goes. He may go. Oh, no, that feels like he might. Yeah, he's going. Way. And there he is slithering. But it's great to see he's actually got this sort of wave movement as he goes, which is really impressive. Let's see if he'll go a bit more. I'm glad one of them actually works. That's cool. And these are just little clockwork motors. That's all it is. It's just little clockwork motors. There's no battery power there at all. It's just clockwork, which is brilliant. It's very, very clever. It also means if they're stored over time, you don't get any battery leakage. Now, I'll show you the last one that came in the post today. This is what upset the balance of power. It's a little bit... I haven't quite put them back together again. This, I think... This is called a Z-Ray or a Z-Ray. And this was I think this was probably the last one that I got when I was still buying them. And it was one of the more advanced... these are red Zoids, by the way. These last three have been red Zoids. So these are the mutant Zoids. And you don't get any early examples of these. All of these are like the Troopazoid. They're sort of more modern looking than the Tyrannozoid. But this one was cool because it was like a sort of... also like a manta ray, so you could sort of, I think I took it in the bath a few times, the one that I had. but you can see that they've become much more advanced in terms of the body styling and everything else. And it is just that attention to detail by Tomy. They were so good with their plastic stuff. I think I've seen you their rats toys before now as well. That was quite a nicely detailed line as well. His head's a little bit floppy, but his head can tuck back in there. You see, it's clever. That's like a standard red Zoid cockpit, very different from the blue cockpits. But it's just and you can see they were designed to go in water. There's polystyrene in these floats, so they were designed to float. But it's also land based. Let's see if his that feels like he gave up. I'm not actually sure. I don't think he wants to go. I'm guessing his wingtips probably did something when he moved originally, but I don't think his motor's not going to play ball for me. It's a shame. But let me show the instructions. Oops, there he goes. This is the thing. Is some of the pegs that hold the pieces in place aren't doing so well. So you can see here, this is the, actually I've moved it over here. Strangely, the instruction leaflet for the Tyrannozoid doesn't name it as a Tyrannozoid. I think the outer box probably did. But this is the sort of instruction leaflet that you got for them. And when I said before that you had to take them off, they were like construction kits, and that's why, because they did actually came on what do you call them, sprues. So you actually had to take the little pieces off the sprues first, and then you put it together per the instructions. So there was a little bit of thought that went into it. You didn't just get this sort of packaged in a box. You actually had to make it, and in making it, you then kind of learn how it's sort of operated and how the gearing and everything else worked to actually make the movement. So it was quite interesting like that. But that's the very early type of Zoid. That was the basic one that sort of originally came out broad. But then they started getting more distinct names, and this is obviously the Trooper Zoid. So the name is there, and it's got Tomy on the leaflet there as well. And you've got more detailed images there, so you can see more clearly what's what. I've actually got some of these pieces to put on, and you can see there that's the android that was supposed to go in the back. But again, lots and lots of pieces. The caps that hold it all together there. It should have been two pilots, as I thought. But it's just that little clever little idea, just to give it the motor and to make it a little bit more interesting than just a model that you put together. Freezoidzilla post to offer. I'll come back to this in a second because I've got something interesting to show you at the end. So make your Trooperzoid more menacing by using the special attack weapons, including the rapid laser beam. Personalise your own machine with labels attached. So that was really clever. That's why I wanted to get hold of a Trooperzoid, because I remembered that they had that extra sort of play element to them, and that's the Z-Ray and there's the slime there as well. So again, very very similar concepts, just showing you how to put them together. But you notice that the coloration there is red. Because they're red Zoids, just to hammer it home to you. But as I say, I will go, if there's any interest, I'll go through the individual Zoids in more detail. But this is an example of the box. So you can see they're called Super Zoids, not particularly sure why. Most of the machines with the power to move, and so that's the sort of the general. But the box artwork is totally unpretentious. It's basically, this is what a Zoid toy looks like. This is what you get in the box once you've made it, and they just use a little bit of sort of standard kind of model background to make it look like it's somewhere fairly sort of alien. So those are some of the other examples of what's available at the range. That was a Croc, and that's a Tarantulon, which is a blue spider Zoid that's turned to the red side, to the mutants. So it's again really sort of nice distinctive thing to see on the shelves. You could spot them a mile off. I've only got that box and a rather banged up Z-Ray box, but you can see they're both exactly the same principle. And this one's different. This one's seen decidedly better days, but it was very cheap that auction, so I can't knock it. And the final thing I wanted to show you is this, and this is quite it's the sort of thing that eBay sometimes throws at you. This is a completely random pickup, but I rather like this. This is just a Zoids sort of points leaflet. It's a special offers leaflet. And I'm just looking on this box now to see if I can actually see where the points were. But if you remember, in that instruction manual for the Trooper Zoid, you see that's the free Zoidzilla offer. So those are the sort of tokens that you would get, which presumably must have come in from somewhere. Maybe they were on the bigger Zoids boxes or something, I'm not sure. But this I love, because it's just like a Zoids book and tape cassette. 25 tokens. Books, posters, tapes, computer games, don't miss out. That's the namer. This is Jeff Senior artwork, incidentally, who you'll have heard me mention before. His artwork is in the Zoids Annual as well. This is the namer who takes us through who the Zoids are and is our sort of initial guide on Zoidstar, the Zoids planet. So history of the Zoids, poster magazine, that's Zoidzilla, that's Krark. Zoids The Battle Begins computer cassette. Remember those? Only if you're ancient. So just collect the tokens you'll find in every Zoids pack. There's one on this leaflet, which presumably is that. The token values add up to bring you one or more of these great Zoids items, which you apparently get from Middlesex. So Zoidzilla poster, Krark poster, book tape cassette, Zoids history poster, computer cassette, and your computer system options are, one of the bits I really smiled at, 48K Spectrum, Commodore 64, Amstrad, MSX, Atari. Excuse me. Those are your options of computer gaming system for your computer cassette, which is epic. I love that. It says 10 tokens or £1. So can you just send £1 in and you get your poster? I don't remember if I had a poster or not, but I just love it as a piece of 80s ephemera connected with the Zoids that I would never have gone looking for because I wouldn't have known it existed. But it's like it's uncut, it's in nice condition for its age, I think. So I just thought it was a rather lovely random thing for eBay to offer me, and for someone to have that on eBay in the first place at the right time for me to see it is just strange. There you go. That's life sometimes. So I'll just finish off by showing you this little array. I'm glad the Slither Zoid lived up to its name and actually slithered. That was nice to be able to see one actually going as it should. And I guess we'll now have to wait for blue reinforcements. But that is my little tiny Zoid collection as it stands. But it just goes to show though the sheer variety of designs that they did just for the smaller Zoids, and these are the smallest Zoids. The bigger ones were far more complex to put together, but they had battery motors. There were some middle range ones called the Power Zoids, I think they were called, and they were about this size but powered with batteries. I never owned one. I always wanted one, but they were that bit more expensive, so I never got one. But they were cool. They were very cool. So yeah, I'm just going to get one more blue Zoid, balance it out, and then, as I say, if there's any interest at all, let me know in the comments, and I'll have a look at each of them in a bit more detail, just to sort of spark your memory, or for whatever reason you'd like, really. Just let me know. So that's been of interest. As I say, I'm going to look at the comics as well, because the comics were done by some quite well-known comics writers and artists now, but back then they were just starting out in their careers, and it was a Marvel Comics line. And I've noticed from some of the scans that people are using to sell them on eBay that they've got some really interesting adverts in them as well for toys of the era like Zoids. So that will be really interesting to have a look at, I think, when they arrive. So hope you've enjoyed that. Do like and subscribe, hit the bell button, all that good stuff. And I will leave it there for the Zoids for now. Cheers for now.